All right,
Okay,
excellent.
great. We didn't even have to do the testing. Testing, 1, 2.
Yeah, just a regular
Little
old.
DNM. Yeah. Yeah, guys. Hey, so hey, welcome back. We got David Noblitt here with us. We just finished with Glenn Carlson from District 1, and now we shifted over to District 2. And we're very thankful and happy to have Dave on. Thank you for taking some time for us, sir. How are you?
Absolutely, really good, really good. So just looking out at the sunshine, trying to peek back out in the big snow blizzard. So
Oh, I was about to ask if it's snow. I was like, I don't know. Up north, you're supposed to get a bunch of snow. It's still snowing down here.
That's
So
a little trickling.
yeah,
So you got
a little
that's
bit.
5 feet. Is it 5 feet? They said?
Yeah. That's when they
no, 5 feet.
When they call for 5 feet, I don't get worried. When they say it's a skiff, that's when you should be concerned.
Right.
Yeah,
You got to
exactly
do the
right.
opposite of what they're thinking about, right? Yeah. So well, we like we said, we appreciate you joining us, and we kind of just want to get cut to the chase here and get to our line of questioning, if you don't mind, and just let the people know. So like we told you prior to us going live, we are down here in the 4th district, and a lot of our people that pay attention here are paying attention to the 4th district's run. But though, we've reached, we got 1,000 people on our page,
Yeah,
and there's a lot of folks that are all around the city. I'm retired out of the military, so there's a few people that are up that way that'll tune in here, and from the some of the sites or whatnot. So there are things that are concerning us, and that we appreciate you we appreciate you coming on to talk to us. And we just kind of want to know what are you running for? What made you get on the seat here and try to get on the city council?
Yep.
Well, it's kind of funny. The tenets of my campaign, believe it or not, are actually the reason why I'm running for the position. It's the accountability issue, obviously public safety, with 40 years in background in public safety, and responsible growth. As you guys have mentioned, the amount of growth that's going on in this community is significant, and we've supposedly laid out some really great plans for that, but yet I don't see a lot of adherence to some of those plans that have been laid out. And we're kind of seeing, doing the same thing that we've always done with a bunch of urban sprawl. And then that kind of backs up to the public safety issue, which has always been a close position in my heart, is that we're lagging behind when it comes to effectively being able to provide one of the fundamental core responsibilities of government, and that's to make sure that our public safety, or that our citizens, are served by public safety, and that they're safe in their community. And the accountability issue is something that's definitely going on with the growth. So it's all very interconnected, and a lot of concern as that expansion is going forward, and people that are saying, hey, we've got some issues with the overbuild, some of the lack of consistency with or adherence to the plans that are supposedly put into place. And they're seeing the same thing that I'm seeing, which is just that massive sprawl of rooftops as we blow up to the north and to the east, and there's no interconnectivity for that. There's not even the considerations. We saw our council reduce our parkland commitments by the developers, and these are all things that are supposed to be things and reasons why people come to Colorado Springs, and yet we're seeing the changes to those things that are taken away from what we know and love about this community. And so I've got some real concerns about that. In addition to the fact that, honestly, drive around Colorado Springs, it's a dirty city. We're not keeping our streets clean. Our streets are an absolute abomination. 2C was put into place, but we've got to realize that effectively when 2C is complete after 10 years of that plan, we'll still have only covered a third of our roadways. And some of the roadways that we repaired on the first year with 2C will need to be repaired. So we'll it's just not going to work. And traffic management that doesn't manage traffic. There's a long laundry list. I'm passionate about living here. I live here. We've been here for 35 years. My wife's a native. My kids live here. My grandkids are being raised here. You know what I mean? So there's a reason to fight for the community that you live in and love.
Indeed.
Right. So you're the first person we've talked to in District 2, I believe.
Yeah.
And it's a ways from here. We were sort of joking. You were saying like, oh, it's not even that far up north anymore. But what do you see as like some of the major issues within your district, District 2?
Well, funny enough, or interesting enough, I should say, there's the fundamentals. So the Briargate Improvement District, which has been a maintenance agreement district that's part of the taxation group right within Briargate, is underwater. So, some of the things that make our community in my specific neighborhood part of the reason why we came here, right? So you have the walkways, the medians that are, you know what I mean, they're taken care of, you know what I mean, the trash is cleaned up, you know, the roadways are clear, and that's underwater, and it has been for a number of years, and it's been known, but it simply hasn't been corrected. We've got some serious traffic issues as this part of the community explodes, and we're continuing to see our city, even though we just annexed 30,000 acres in Banning Lewis Ranch, continue to gobble up land further and further east, and of course pre-pandemic. So I mean, as of the change in even traffic issues has subtly been reduced some. It's obviously rebounding now, right, with more and more people getting re-engaged into the workplaces and so forth like that. But our roadways, eastbound Woodman is an absolute nightmare. Northbound Research in the morning is an absolute nightmare, because we're just seeing this explosiveness of growth, but we're not providing for the infrastructure to support that growth. So we're seeing a government that's literally not responsive to the people, and basically saying, yeah, just suffer through it until we get around to, you know, catching up our community to the pace of where the developers are going. And the developers are making great money, right? They're building as fast as they possibly can. And yet we're not seeing that that concern for some of those people that are actually coming here and buying houses. And with that, in the overall picture, big picture, and full transparency, right? I believe that we've artificially incentivized a lot of the businesses that have come here, and we've given away hundreds of millions of dollars in incentives to those businesses. And it's terrific, but we need to realize that we have a tax and fee structure that was designed and intended to be equally distributed amongst everybody. And when the government gets in the business of picking winners and losers, of who gets to pay taxes or who gets to keep their own taxes, that means somebody else is going to have to make those taxes up. And so, which is real kind of interesting, obviously, from your guys' perspective on a bonus that you've always kind of been part of the support for the agenda that you're wanting to move forward. But that being said, it needs to be adjusted, and we need to quit giving that away. We've become a destination, right? Yeah. Colorado Springs is a place to come. The city, you know, everybody knows about the city. So we need to quit giving things away, because somebody's going to end up paying for all those taxes and fees that a lot of these businesses and developments that have come in and gotten special treatment are not going to be paying for. Somebody's got to make up that money.
Yeah.
Right.
So what's your plan on that? How do you plan to do that? Because for me, this sounds great, right? And I'm like, yes, exactly right. So how do you do that? You know, I got a tendency to ask long questions, but I got this thing in my head where I see the city council there, and they fight and argue, and they got their own special interest, but, you know, for their individual district, and there's no real progress, or, you know, if there is any progress, it might be amongst one or two of the members and not the whole council. How do you plan to make that kind of thing happen and get that conversation going?
Well, in the first portion of one of my tenets, that accountability issue, I honestly plan on engaging the community on a fairly frequent basis. I would hope quarterly. We've got a tremendous library smack dab in the middle of our district, actually to the western edge of it. But that being said, it's very accessible to everybody. And to bring the community in, sit down and have those conversations. I think a lot of the things that are happening in city council right now, first of all, are happening during the work week, during the day, when, guess what, for the most part, everybody else is busy working, doing something else. So they're not even aware. The number of decisions that are occurring while they're in executive council or executive session are also concerning, because it's totally out of the purview of the community. And a lot of times the citizens don't know what's upcoming, and by the time that they do, it's too late. And even when they do find out about it, right, they try to get access to it. Right, they try to have some access to it, and then you know, I've seen laundry lists or mile-long lines of folks that have brought in concerns, again, about some of the development, about the very things that are actually hitting our community, about the fact that my kids' neighborhood, when they first bought their first house, ended up in Cumbre Vista, and they're in a dual taxation where we annex property, but we're not providing for a fire protection district for it. So all of a sudden, beholden to all the residents, surprise, on their property tax, there's an extra $500 a year for Black Forest Fire Protection District. And if we're gonna annex property, that means you're now within the realm and the responsibilities of the city of Colorado Springs. Yeah. So those people should be aware of that. So I believe we need to make the rules so that people are well advised on the front side, and they need to have the community engagement so that we have those meetings. And right, so I hate to say anything good has come out of COVID,
Yeah.
But the fact that for us to be able to have these kind of meetings right now and to be able to inform our constituents, and because my point of being accountable to the constituents means that I have to engage, and that's a promise that I'm making, and that's the reason why we're going to move forward so that they're aware of the issues that are upcoming, that are going to be considered, as we're looking at, again, annexing more property. Nobody even knows about that until the last minute. So those are the kind of concerns that I think the constituents would want to know about, and I'm going to do everything that I can to make them aware of it before it happens, so that they have a voice. So when I sit on council for them, they don't have to worry about trying to make a 2:00 Tuesday afternoon meeting, that their voice will already be heard because we had that discussion beforehand.
Yeah.
Right. So, well, speaking of what you were talking about with regards to like annexation of new land, we just talked to Glenn Carlson, and I brought up the retool costs that they're talking about, and I think that is a big issue, and we haven't actually pushed this a lot on our show, but Colorado Springs just keeps annexing more land and growing outward. Right now, the retool costs are trying to increase density and do infill within the city, right, without growing. And I know you were a firefighter, correct? Are you retired now, or?
Well,
so,
I will be. Absolutely.
All right,
Okay,
thank you.
will be,
Appreciate your stories, man. Thank you.
But and a big issue with that is the fact that we have to spread our services out so far and wide. So are you a supporter of more infill and more development within the city and less annexation?
Absolutely. I think until we get to the point where we're actually pushing up against the limits of no more available land, like I said, we annexed 30,000 acres of Banning Lewis Ranch, so we've got a ton of property to deal with if we want growth. But you're absolutely right, and I think the concerns that we've had, right? So changing some of that and retool Colorado Springs COS is good. Again, we're doing plan COS, and yet we're not adhering to that. So just because we put it together in a really cool plan, we still circumvent, right? Because plan COS definitely had the amount of parklands and trails and open space, interconnectivity of multimodal transportation included in it. That plan was codified, and yet they reduced the parkland. So again, we're seeing council saying, well, we're making these great plans, but they're not adhering to them yet. Very long answer, I know, but yes, very much so. The opportunity for us to take a look at maybe some of our underutilized retail spots, and I'll be real honest with you, we had a not that I would never be, but I hate when I say it. We had a candidate meeting over at Church for All Nations, and I honestly was excited. I thought I was the only one who had really eyeballed kind of like that rundown commercial occupancies, basically from Galley Road all the way up to Constitution on the east side of Academy Boulevard, right? I worked out of Station 7 right there, so I was ultimately familiar with that corridor, right? That doesn't adjoin or butt up next to directly other neighborhoods that would be concerned about even multi-family housing, right? So why can't we change, right, and look at rezoning that area and bringing in something that has the ability to reduce our overall housing costs, provide some really neat housing for our people that already has access to transportation and all the other facilities and inter-services that are provided there, and work in those kind of areas. And across the board, there was a lot of support for those kind of infill projects. And so I think that's going to really, really, really be a very prominent move on the new council, because I think everybody who at least is seeking that off is eager to push forward on that. And I totally agree with that. As long as we actually do a really good job at making good plans, which is what we do, is we bring people in from the community, we make these good plans. But unlike plan COS, how about we actually abide by those plans, right? And do what we say we're going to do, and then not let some of the power players or the money makers, because in all honesty, we got a lot of energy about, rebuilding our downtown. I get that. Those people are passionate about that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that needs to be the next place for affordable housing to be made, just because it helps support, the power players that are behind moving that forward. We need to look at what's the most available, financial, reasonable, and overall best place to put these places for everybody.
Yeah. That's not the first time that I've heard that, the city brings in and pays these experts to come in and give all of this advice on development and where how things should be, and then don't even listen to them. It's just like completely ignore what they came up with. So in that area, I never thought about that. That would be fantastic.
I mean, there's so many empty buildings over there because we don't. That's not the era we live in anymore, right?
Right.
And, you know, I got to say too, that I live near downtown. I live in Richard Scorman's district, the west side, which is just completely getting gentrified right now. And I think what's frustrating is they're just tearing down affordable housing and building up,
Right.
you know, these fancy new condos and shit. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
it would be nice. So, and I know a lot of this, like the mayor doesn't necessarily control that, the city council does, but I know the mayor, um, obviously is a powerful player in Colorado Springs, and he has absolutely no problem with the sprawl. He said the sprawl is good because it reduces traffic, which I don't know what studies he's reading, because that's not what most urban studies folks do.
Yeah.
But so what are your thoughts on the mayor and his agenda? I also am curious because I know you're a firefighter, and
yeah, we want to talk about that.
We want to talk.
We appreciate you doing that for your whole life, man. Thanks, man. We really appreciate it.
No worries. My concern is not necessarily with this mayor. My concern is with the position of what's happened within the government and how it's been structured in Colorado Springs. We need to realize that in 2010 or 11, whatever, when they went to the strong mayor form of government, that the power players in this town spent over $1 million on that campaign to get that form of government instituted, because it gives the executive branch so much power. And my frustration has been that we are literally looking at one person in totality making those kind of overall decisions. And my frustration with our council is, in any form of government that we've established within this country, right? So we're a representative republic, a democracy, is that we're supposed to have people to represent, in fact, the people. We've got literally one person pulling the trigger for so much stuff. I've personally seen that individual person have the capacity to be able to accept or ignore state legislation, to make the determination on what contracts do and do not go forward,
right?
And things that actually benefit the citizens. And yet it's left singularly to a strong mayor. And our council, because of the first mayor that was put into place, there was a little bit of conflict between the council and the mayor. Then all of a sudden everybody says, well, then basically, you know, I mean, it's really good if the council just gets along with the mayor.
Right.
Well, you know what? It's good if you want to see what we have now, which is one source of power basically going in one direction under the guise of whatever, the executive branch pulling the trigger on everything. I believe the legislature, which is the city council, should find that balance to the executive branch. So the council, being the absolute representatives of the constituents, actually has the voice being heard, so that the executive branch can't singularly get away and pull all the things that he believes is in the best interest of the community. Because in all honesty, they could be, for the sake of developing a legacy, because everything's going to explode and be really great. And we're going to look around and go, hey, look at all this tremendous growth. But in 12 years from now, when none of it has paid for itself and we continue to see the deterioration of our infrastructure, nobody will necessarily remember exactly who was responsible for that. And unfortunately, the accountability totally goes out the window. I believe we need to have more respect to the constituents and represent them. I believe that's why the council needs to be more included in the overall decisions of our community. And that's the reason why I have a concern with the strong mayor form of government. I don't know how we unwrap that, except for bringing the constituents into the loop of the information that's going on. So that kind of backs up to my accountability issue, because if there's enough of an outcry, I guarantee that regardless of that strong mayor, they're very sensitive politically to the mood of the people and what their wishes are.
Yeah. Well, you want to move to the 4th district, man? We need you down here. I completely agree. And I think that, what I've noticed when, talking to folks that are going to run for these seats is that, man, it's a great idea, but I just don't, and I'm glad that you said, I don't really know how to do that except for to bring it to the people, and man, I think that's fantastic. So, when we're talking about, you brought up Richard Scorman what's the mayor's name? Southers.
I brought up Richard Scorman.
Yeah, brought up Southers, but for us, we I don't know if there are a few community organizations that are up that way, but down here, we feel that there's been a whole lot of community outreach and trying to get the attention of the mayor and things that we want to, and because we understand that, we're trying to get the council, but like they can't make these decisions. There's nothing, they don't have any power. So, and then also like the wanting to rock the boat, I guess, for lack of a better term, like they just want to, agree, like keep things moving along, and again, it's like that singular focus on their one district or whatnot, instead of, you know, this entire thing. But the mayor, we feel like he doesn't. He has a tendency to not pay attention to what the people are saying and go the complete opposite direction, and almost like purposefully sometimes. And the city council reflects that as well. You know, there was just an article a couple weeks ago asking, I think it was in the Southeast, correct me if I'm wrong, it's either the Southeast or the Indy, that said, hey, does the city council even listen to the people? Are they even paying attention to us? So my question to you is, do you feel that that's a problem? And again, like I think I know your answer is going to be from what you said already, but how do we fix that thing if you believe so?
Yeah, again, you're almost too nice to ask that question. I mean, the fact is, it's the accountability side of it. And first of all, I don't have agenda outside of making sure that this community is well taken care of, because again, this is where I live.
Yeah.
I be honest with you, I'm much more suited to actually retire and jump in an RV and go travel a little bit.
Man, who you telling? Goodness.
That being said, it is very much the accountability issue, and it's the frustration. So I'll be really honest, I mean, we from Firefighters Association, we back Richard Scorman. We saw the passion of Richard coming in and his frustration about the land swap deal with the Broadmoor and that whole Strawberry Fields thing, right? Richard was on fire.
Yeah.
Absolutely on fire. And I mean, I remember him watching him prior to him coming back on council, confront the council about their decisions and moving in that direction for that. And he was frustrated, and he was like, I'm getting back on council and we're going to try to hold some things right and make some accountability happen. And I got to be really honest with you, dude. I mean, I don't know where it went or what is going on, because the council has definitely been compliant. Yeah. And it's frustrating. I got to tell you, so I've spoken to Olivia one time, and I know that she's not a huge fan of necessarily your position specifically, but overall, that young lady's got a passion in her in the same fashion that I do, to try to make sure that there's accountability to the constituents. And so I'm not bagging on Scorman because he's not supporting me. I found it kind of interesting, even in the fact that the Indy kind of came out, and we've tried to find that balance in everything, and honestly understanding and representing the people, and yet they're kind of going with Geislinger, right? Which is the same person that continues to do the same thing that we're seeing going on right now. And so I'm a little taken aback by that, because I'm not quite sure of that direction, because it really does come down. The only way to get things done is to make sure that the constituents know what's going on and to be the voice for them. And I'm going to have to find out the way, right, through social media, through physical meetings or whatever it is, to get as many people engaged, because everybody's busy, right? But I need to at least throw out 3, 4, 5, 6 questions at every given one of those, yes or no, right? Take a moment to take a look at this. What's your perspective on it? Because that's what I'm going to represent. And getting the voice of the people to walk in and say, I had 32,000 people say yes to this or no to this. You know what I mean? So from my position, it will be to support that, you know what I mean, the constituents within my district, and to look out for the best interest of the district, of the city. But I know for at least, and that's the reason I'm running, is that the issues that are literally going on within District 2, the constituents that I've spoken with are super frustrated because they've gone forward, brought solid rock, information that would be counter to the decision ultimately that council would take, and they seemingly were ignored. And I can't continue to watch my neighborhoods shift in those directions, and people really need to be held accountable to the citizens. We're the people that live in this city, and that's the reason why that accountability issue is so much part of my campaign, and an honest tenet of what I'm going to carry forward.
Indeed. You got some?
Yeah, well, no, I mean, I agree. We have actually been pushing Richard on this, and I got to say, you know what? We were pushing a people's budget earlier this year, and I contacted Richard several times about this. And, we went forward at the time when the town hall was supposed to be happening, the budget town hall. We organized a bunch of people to come to the, not actual physical meeting, but the online meeting, and speak out. And when I talked to Richard, he was like, it's really too late for that. I was like, well, what the hell's the point of all this?
Right.
If there really isn't a point at which we can get involved. And it is a little frustrating. And I think you're spot on with regards to the city council is a little bit too deferent to the mayor. And I think we need to have councilors on there. that are willing to actually stand up to the mayor. You know, Geislinger does come out, and he came out to our protest this summer and he talked to us, right? But he didn't really talk to us. He talked down to us. Yeah, he talked.
Here, I'm gonna go talk to the people.
Yeah, and tell, like, look, here's what you need to consider.
Let them
right?
understand. Yeah.
That really has nothing to do with what I'm about to ask you.
We don't like
but it just speaks. You keep talking about this accountability, and this has been something that we have been interested in for the last 2 years at least, obviously for longer, but something that's big to us. So the police department, obviously there's been a lot of criticism of the police department over the last 2 years, and the mayor, you know, the mayor seems very close to Chief Niski. And the mayor has been unwilling to acknowledge that there's like a real problem within the police department. So what are your thoughts on holding the police department accountable and holding the mayor and Chief Niski accountable in those regards too?
Well, I mean, obviously with my involvement with both Chief Niski and his predecessor, and in all honesty, had developed relationship with those guys, so I know them personally. To be absolutely frank, and this is counterintuitive, so you got to hear me out on this. What our police department actually needs is more resources, because what they don't have right now, and let's be honest about it. So if everybody has got so much crap piled on their plate that it is literally spilling over, right? And the core fundamental responsibility that you have is to protect the community. With the thinnest line of resources that you have, where you're literally taxing your people to their absolute limits. So to the breaking point of everybody, I don't care how well you're trained, how much background that you have, you know what I mean, compassion that you have, everybody has a threshold. And when those people are absolutely just stretched beyond their limit, then you definitely have a concern about their ability to react appropriately. So I'm saying to the point that if they have the amount of resources that are actually necessary, that we can take care of the fundamentals in this community. And that's where we're lagging right now, because we aren't taking care of the fundamentals in public safety. And they actually had the ability to set aside resources that were necessary so that we had, and we're working on this. So understand this, both police department and fire department working on this, to have a community response teams that are able to engage and go to a lot of the calls that are going out there that really don't even need a police officer. But even to that point, right? So we're building on that, but we need the resources, we need the funding for that. But we also need to have enough of those resources so that we can set aside time. And let's be real honest, if we're all human beings and we're actually like legitimately real with each other, to reach out to the communities and engage with them, to sit down and have those conversations, to be able to gather together and to say, you know what I mean, once a month in each particular pocket or neighborhood within our community, we're going to have this, you know what I mean, this get together, and we're going to sit down, we're going to discuss the real problems about what happened last week, what happened last month, what's actually going on in our neighborhoods, what are the actual concerns that we're having, and that the sergeants that are part of the patrol division that are overseeing those neighborhoods can truly hear from the people that are in those communities exactly what their concerns are, and to engage with them. That's going to be so much more of an expansion than LETAC is going to be, and LETAC's a good oversight on that. The reality is that we have to have those people to have the extra time and resources to put those people in the right places to be able to engage with the community, because we can, right? It's just like Geislinger, right? We can have LETAC, we can have whatever, we can even have the most diverse, best profile of that committee as we can possibly develop. But until we actually get engagement between the people that are having the concerns and the people who are the point of that concern, until they actually get together, I mean, seriously, how else are we going to resolve it? We can't. Reducing the police force only makes things worse. Only makes things worse. It's been shown every place that they've actually taken away funding from the police department, things have actually gotten worse. So it sounds counterintuitive, but we actually have to increase the amount of funding and resources that we have for the police department. And I get that that doesn't sound right in a lot of people's ears, but if they really have the opportunity to sit down and you know what I mean, that the community members that are feeling uncomfortable and insecure in their own neighborhoods sits down with the police officer who's probably, you know what, a real human being. Well, he is, or her is a real human being. But to find out from a community member, to have an officer to look back over at you and say, you know what, yeah, it sucks coming at 2:00 in the morning for such and such a call. Their adrenaline's high. They're freaked. They're trying to maintain it inside the scope of everything that they know to do, but they're in the same place. They're, you know what I mean? Their internal wiring says self-preservation. Their internal wiring says, do the best to protect as many as you can. So having an understanding that the citizens realize that the cops are sometimes, shaken in some of these situations, in the same way that the cops can listen and hear directly from the community members that are being impacted by this, so that you can have that understanding. Honestly, that's the only way we're going to get the resolution on this, because standing across the street and yelling at each other is not going to make it. So they have to have what's necessary to get beyond the basics of just barely holding on to the fundamentals, to be able to attribute some resources to that, to truly make that connection, have that communication, and try to resolve some of these issues.
There you go.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. I think you knew that very not. I don't agree with any of that. I think that and the thing is, okay. So when you're dealing with somebody that's a public safety official that their whole life, and got a different perspective and understanding on how things work or whatnot, you got to respect that, and I do. But I believe that when you come from the perspective of what the police needs to do their job correctly, instead of what their job is, you know what I mean? Like, we label, this is what the job, what the job of a cop is, and this is the right way to do it, regardless of the outside influence of the people that they're policing or trying to serve or whatnot. I think they're taking their perspective over the people is a mistake, and it's proven, right? So one thing, whenever you do this, you place them above the people. So now it's not a service. It's a we're here because of you, and it automatically, like you said, at 2 a.m, they don't want to come at 2 a.m. That's their job. Like they should be happy to be there at 2 a.m. Like the flipping it to say, oh, they're just a person and they don't want to do their job, so that's why you need to act differently. I think that's the wrong way to look at it, and it's obviously proven. Again, in neighborhood like this, where the police will come and they'll place their cars like this and just sit there in front of your house, and or I don't know, you call the ambulance and they don't come for 30 minutes. You know what I'm saying? But a cop will show up to make sure that nobody needs to be arrested first. These type of things give way to that perspective dominating the entire situation. So then when we say the police need more resource, and just the other day, I watched, down the street here, I watched, they had this big ass bulldozer that's, meant to like collapse a building, and I see that they got the ATF trucks riding through the neighborhood here. They're riding through to wherever they're going to drop them off at the police station, whatever they're doing. I see that they have plenty of resource. And then, when you say that defunding or taking away stuff from them only creates more problem, but earlier in the statement, you said that using other forms of police, like not sending a cop to every single situation on 911 is helpful. So in order to make it, but you need the funding for it, right? But they're eating exactly a third of the budget, so that we can't even get to that. I'm wondering where is the middle ground here? You know what I mean? Because obviously there's people that are fundamentally not going to agree with this, and the powers that be are fundamentally not going to agree with this. Niski said inside of the LETAC meeting that, hey, we are going to ask for more money this budget, and when we get it this budget, we're going to ask for more again the next budget. Like, they know already that this is the argument for to the end of time here, that we need more police because we're growing so much, and we need more police, and we need to take away whatever that third of the budget it could be doing, we need it more over here, you know what I mean? So we could put more cops. And then when they hire more cops, they're all white males. There might be, some things struggled in there, but if we look back at these, especially this last 2 or 3 cycles, there is no color in these places, in these classes that are getting hired, or being put on the street or whatnot. Where's the middle ground? Because obviously I know that this isn't going to make you change your mind, and what you say isn't going to make us change our mind. So like, where as an official that comes from this, where does the middle ground, and where do you see that happening at? Because when I said, hey, do you want to move to the 4th district, because you said I'll listen to the people. I go down and there's a library slap in the middle of our stuff, and we'll go and we'll bring that stuff there. And it feels like that is going to be a huge issue for you if you make yourself subject to that and say the things that you said.
Well, and I'm good, and honestly, I hear what you're saying, but in the very context of what you're saying is the answer to the solution is to have the conversations and to try to find out and have understanding to both sides. We're fundamentally, so first of all, let me try to work backwards in conversation. So yeah. the diversity of the department, I know for a fact on both sides, right, police and fire, that they've got full-time committed members that are literally making an outreach into every avenue and doing absolutely everything that they can to try to provide as much diversity within that as they can, because the outreach is significant and the efforts can be documented. So I'm comfortable in that, you know what I mean? But we need to realize we need to look around this community, and let's be honest about the fact that this community, man, I mean, the profile in this community is struggling in the fact that it's not as diversified as a lot of the other areas of this country. So when you're looking at, you know what I mean, Black representation or Hispanic representation cumulatively being less than 30%, and the rest of it is Anglo, then, you know what I mean, that profile of what ends up having as far as resources to be able to tap into, and we've looked into, and it's somewhat frustrating, right, of even, I think, getting into the high schools, which is where it really needs to happen. But then we're going to have to change the stigma of what people believe or think the police are, because it's very hard to go talk to young African-American men right now or women and say, we would really appreciate your consideration in pursuing a career in law enforcement when they don't have a trust within the career of law enforcement, right? So it's pretty tough to engage or encourage them to pursue that. And again, the only way that you're literally going to resolve that is to have interactions and conversations. If you're going to try to do it by classes or by whatever, that's a good start to provide the basic information. But if we can't even rotate our officers off the force or off the beat now to sit down and have that additional education, to turn around and have an understanding of how to engage the community, how are those conversations ever going to start? And if they never start, how are we going to ever get a resolution to the issue? I mean, it really has to be, we've got to meet face to face. We have to sit down and have those one-on-one conversations, not in a city hall conference room someplace. We have to have them in the neighborhoods. And I got to tell you, I've been a firefighter for 40 years. I don't want to fire at 2:00 in the morning. It has nothing to do with my ability to go and do my job. It's my ability, the fact that if I have to go do my job, somebody else is having a bad day. And that's not a good thing. If police officers would love to have nothing else to do besides not have to respond to situations, to crisis situations, it would be the best day of their life, because it keeps them safe and it keeps them have the opportunity to be more available for the other services that are in the community. But that's what I mean about resources. If we can't even take 100 cops off the line right now because we're so limited on the number of officers that we have, to make sure that we can get them into the training, into the engagement of understanding of how to make an outreach to their community. If we can't do that because we can't take them off the street because we don't have enough officers to provide the fundamental responsibilities of the public safety, then how are we going to ever move forward, dude? I mean, literally, how are we ever going to move forward?
Well, so, this is one thing that a lot of people talking about defunding the police have been talking about, is the fact that, you're a firefighter. And I know that the city of Colorado Springs has increased the program to send like firefighters or EMTs to some crisis situations. But how do you do that if you don't have the money for it? Because the police are going to all of these crisis situations, right? There's a limited budget that the city has to operate with. And Mayor Suthers seems to think that rather than setting up things like they have in Denver, where they set up a completely different, it's not a police unit, but it's a program where
it's a task force.
Yeah, you send people that aren't police, you send EMTs and social workers. They have it in Eugene, Oregon too, Cahoots. That costs money, right? And a lot of times, even when cops go to these calls, they're really like, oh, I'm going to call Cahoots instead. Because the thing is, cops are, yes, I understand they're humans, but they're trained in a specific job, especially since the 1970s. The police force have become increasingly militarized. They've become increasingly seen as a force to go in and use force against people to quell them. I mean, look at the summer protests in Colorado Springs, right? The Colorado Springs was not exactly Minneapolis, right? And yet the police used, I can't even count the number of tear gas canisters, smoke bombs, pepper balls, right? It didn't seem like they were lacking funding in that regard. Or, Sean and I were passing out groceries one day, apparently on private property.
Yeah.
And they called the police, and the police were there in less than 5 minutes. 2 police were there in less than 5 minutes. So it didn't seem like they really lacked resources in that regard. It just seems like they're deciding where they want to put the resources.
Right.
And even
absolutely.
himself
No.
said, somebody at city council a year and a half ago was asking, if you had all the police resources that you could get, would you implement community-oriented policing? And he's like, no, probably not. And a city across city community-oriented policing was like really successful. Like you look at Boston, that was seen as the 1990s miracle.
That's what you're describing, is that's we need more community-oriented policing.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
with regards to that, like how do you solve that problem? If you think that the police are being too stretched thin because they're being called to, like, we know the cops are called to a bunch of bullshit.
Right. Yeah.
You probably know this as a firefighter, right? You've showed up to things that the cops, like, why are the cops here? Cops show up to things all the time that they don't show up to. How do you start dealing with that? As a city councilor, because you're not in charge of the police force as a city councilor. Right. But you are in charge of the budget. That's the one thing that the city council does have control over.
Right. So, which is funny because it's back to the original question that we had, or the original statement that I had like 20 minutes ago, right? My frustration is that we don't have sustainable revenue in this community to be able to provide the fundamentals of this government. And yet we're turning around and giving away millions of dollars to all of these businesses that are coming here. Let's look at the fact that Shields, the new sporting goods store that's up in my neighborhood, right? Yeah. It's supposed to be this big draw. They gave them $13 million that I'm aware of, at least $13 million in tax breaks, right? That's just in sales tax. That's not even including property taxes. It's going to take $650 million of retail sales at the city's tax rate to make that up. And right now, the North Shields runs about $60 million a year. So it's going to take 11 years before we're even going to break even on that business.
And they did the same for Amazon too, and the other one that you're going to do.
So, and how many of the big box stores that we have in this community are from previous business incentives that were given, and then once all those incentives ran out, did the companies stay here? I believe in developing organically grown businesses because they want to be here, and then typically they'll be here both in the good and in the bad. So there's part of the funding problem is we're giving away way too much, and like I said, we've become a destination. We need to stop giving those things away on the front side of it. There needs to be that parity across the board of the fees, tax structures. Everybody should carry the water as far as taking care of their community, because these are the issues that we're seeing. And it's really funny. So the mayor and I, we've not seen eye to eye on a lot of things, and he tolerates me, and I try to be respectful to him. Interestingly enough, John Souther was actually the one that implemented restorative justice program, especially within the juvenile program, back when he was the district attorney here in Colorado Springs. And I'm like incredibly in favor of that type of programming where we quit just absolutely sending everybody to jail on the first sinking time anything happens. Right? To actually, what do? You sit down, you find some resolution, you bring the parties together, and you develop communication. So again, until we get to that point in time that we have the ability to have our people engage, if you think about wild animals, and I'm not comparing anybody as far as a police officer to a wild animal, so somebody that's out there recording, I don't want to hear that, whatever. But they're at their worst time when you back them into a corner. You guys talk about all of the response that they had. You know what I mean? In reality, our demonstrations here were very very low key compared to the other things within the country on both sides. But a lot of it was because there were some communications. Some of the response by the police is because they're undernumbered. We can't keep enough cops in academies. So, I mean, it's a goofy thing. And like I said at the beginning, I know that you're not going to like the perspective. But the fact is that we do need to find more applications for restorative justice. We need to find ways to be able to interact our community with our officers directly. LETAC can be overseeing that and understand how to provide those connections and logistically set up that interaction. But guys, we're going to have to sit down and have open, honest, frank, across the table communication. And if there's an issue, it's almost like, you know what I mean? Tag, you're out, right? So if there's somebody from the community that's having an issue that can't get past that point where we find middle ground, then tag, they're out. If there's an officer on this side that can't get past a strong-headed position of where they're going to be, whatever, tag, they're out, until we get a point of leadership on both sides so that we can have those conversations to try to find answers. Because guys, we're doing the same thing right now. We're on opposite ends of the table. But Sean, I guarantee that we could probably sit down over a weekend and with a couple notepads and you know what I mean, some tacos and maybe a Modelo, because it's like really.
We got some Modelo
in the fridge. Modelo in the fridge.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? And come to a point to find that. Because I hear what you're saying, but you can't say Colorado Springs, well, ATF is running down the street, or they get a big ass tank, because a lot of that stuff is federal grant dollars. And the reason they get that is because they don't have enough officers. So then they think they need to carry a bigger stick because they have less resources. So you see where I'm saying, where it sounds counterintuitive?
Yeah.
You're seeing all the armament stuff, that militarization of it, but it's because the resources that they lack in the numbers. So they have to try to carry a bigger stick because they don't feel like they're secure enough with the resources that they really need to have that.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that. But the thing is that I know that equipment is meant for me. You know, it's not meant for anyone else in this city. That equipment is meant for us. You know what I mean? So I get it, man, and I think you're right about this. And where I I'm kind of like, this is where when you get into the nuance of people's ideology and what they're believing and thinking or whatnot, it kind of mushes up a little bit. But I don't expect for a city council candidate to come up and say, yeah, defund the cops. We don't need any cops, especially for a firefighter. I don't expect that, right? But what I do expect is to hear the people and to hear that that I'm going to go through the community and I'm going to go through the people and let that come to us. You know what I mean? So I think that there's somebody here that said that cops are trained to kill. And this is Will Smith. Cops are trained to kill. That's not who I want responding to traffic stops, mental health emergencies, and petty disputes. So that when you have a traffic stop, that you got a person walking to you that they're ultimately will kill you. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I've never, like, when I talk to people, like, I wouldn't talk to John if I knew that he would actually kill me if he got mad enough. You know what I mean?
I've never been worried about an interaction with a firefighter, for example.
Right.
Firefighters show up to emergencies all the time. When a firefighter shows up, I'm like, oh shit.
Right. So
you know what I'm saying?
Right.
But when a cop does, a lot of people are that way.
Their hand on the gun, and they're, you know what I'm saying? And all of this stuff is going on. So, when I hear you say they need more resources, they need to hire more of these people, it's just like, wait, whoa, hold on. That is not, I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. And I think that if their mentality was fixed, was adjusted, then they wouldn't need the big stick. You know what I mean? And exactly just like you said, my bad, John. But the community policing, and getting down to the community level with where the cops know these kids in these schools, and like you said, the high school or whatever. I don't want cops anywhere near my kids right now. But I would appreciate if there was I don't know, like a building over here or whatever where the cops were at, that we knew that they were there. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if I'd appreciate it, but it would just be different for me. Like, I would know that that's where they interact with my kids or whatnot. But yeah, man, I think that there's a perspective on it that when we communicate these things, that it's got to be understood. And in all honesty, there's no one here in the city that wants crazy crime going on and guns everywhere, and nobody wants that. So, when someone says defund the police, we're not saying get them out of here and kick them out and we'll police ourselves. Well, of course not. But, I believe that when there's a catch-22 when we're talking about funding, and there, like John said, there's a set budget. There's not going to be more money for this. Yeah, well, you're right. I guess there is going to be more money.
Good times and bad times, police budgets always.
Yeah, the budget goes. So, I feel like maximize what the money that's already there and make sure that it's for all of the people, that, you know, make sure that the results come for all of them. So I'm down for the Modelo and taco and a notepad anytime, Dave. Come on by.
Seriously.
I feel like if you'll be at the city council, I would love for you to I would love to be able to talk to you like that and be able to have that conversation, because it feels like, you know,
well, I don't feel like Southers and Niski actually want to have that conversation, and that's
I was just gonna say that.
That's one of the sorry, yeah, that's one of the questions we have. And I know we're going up on a lot of time here now, but I mean,
yeah.
What are your thoughts on? And I keep pushing this, I know, and partially because I know you are a firefighter. I mean, what are your thoughts on Southers' attitude towards responsiveness? Well, yes, to the firefighters, because
he wouldn't give them any money. He won't give firefighters no damn money.
But his responsiveness to the city, because I feel like he's never actually admitted that there's any problem in the police force in the city.
So understanding that who the mayor is and what his position is, right? I mean, so we got to kind of understand. And John Southers has been a consummate politician for his whole career, and to that point, he stays in that lane. And in all honesty, bears little emotion, even though he's a passionate man, in trying to kind of show one side or the other. He tries to stay in that neutral line, right? I'm not saying that that's good or that's bad. My wife laughs at me because and she also says it's because I'm getting older, right? That my estrogen levels are going up, right? I mean, I have a tendency to be, you know, really frustrated and angry sometimes about not being able to resolve situations when it seems like we should easily come to a point. And by the way, like the majority of times of scruffs that I've ever had in my life past junior high school were always typically breaking up a fight when the little guy was getting beat up, and I stood in it and stood up some, you know what I mean? And sometimes swallowed real hard and went, wow, you know, this maybe was not a great idea. I've ultimately been a protector of the little guy, because in all honesty, I started my life off on that end of the stick, right? So I know what it's like. The mayor I think he is a well-tuned, trained politician that runs down the center of the road. And I feel that he doesn't want to lean one direction or another. And it doesn't seem like he's compassionate to that point. And that's kind of the other edge of my side of it, is my wife thinks as I'm getting older, my estrogen levels going up too high. So now I cry just about anything, especially if it's anything to do with my daughter.
That's a good thing, man. I think we all need that.
So John Southers doesn't show that, but understanding, he really does. He sits down in the back rooms with a lot of people, and he'll get frustrated because, and this is kind of funny, when things don't go well, because it doesn't reflect upon him politically speaking. So he doesn't like to have those outcries, or that, you know what I mean, the ups or downs or the gyrations. He wants that even keel all the way across the board, because that's the way everybody's the happiest, and that way it looks the best for him politically. And honestly, that's his suit. That's where his strong point's at. You know what I mean? He's a smart man in a lot of ways. I don't like a lot of his perspectives on some things. I think he obviously uses like his position as a strong mayor, sometimes from a bully pulpit. And we've had some conflicts, and like I said, we're not friends, and we've had some fairly in-depth conversations. And I've been truly frustrated, as I'm sure you have been, at his responses, but it's more so the fact that he's a consummate politician.
Yeah, we said that multiple
definitely.
times. Like, Southers is a professional, like he is the most professional politician in the city, I think, without question.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
Yeah.
You know, I want to get some of these in, because we've just been talking about this issue for a long time, and it's a good issue to talk about. But, you know, one thing that's been happening in Colorado Springs lately is we have a severe housing crisis. And I've made jokes that the city keeps talking about the housing crisis, and then they're like, we don't know what to do, even though they've never actually tried to do anything.
We never came up with any ideas, and we're out of ideas.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, part of what we were pushing with our people's budget is like, you know, we need to redirect some of those resources into the city actually funding public housing, because the city gives absolutely zero money directly into housing. You know, like we'll help out in other sorts of ways, but What are your thoughts on solutions towards creating more affordable housing? I think we're something like 20,000 units behind in affordable housing in Colorado Springs right now. How do we actually take care of that?
Right. Well, in all honesty, I mean, especially in my district. So again, so here's kind of that balance, right? Because this is the justification that the developers are using. Well, we have to hurry up and put all this stuff up because we're so far behind, right? So they're just truly blasting through all those cool plans that we talked about earlier as well. So we put these plans in place, and yet we're racing to try to come up with this problem. And I'll go back to my original statement again. We artificially influence the amount of business encouragement to come to this community without a consideration of who's going to house all the people that are going to work at those businesses. So we provided all this incentivization. It doesn't pay its own bills as far as the taxes. And then we've got this issue and this crisis on the backside that we need funding for. Right. So in last year's budget, I tried to sit down recently and try to find out, as we received a little over $5 million of FEMA funding for this specific reason, and 3.2 million of that went to infrastructure. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? I don't know, because I'm with you, right? I don't know. I've heard about things that are supposed to be going forward, but I don't know that it's actually making that impact. My concern is that we're hurriedly trying to, and again, gentlemen, we're building stuff to. I mean, come on, come out to my house. I don't care, whatever, and we'll go on a personal tour, because we're supposed to have this density of housing, right? We're supposed to be able to utilize there's like mansions going up to the east of me. I don't think there's anything east of Powers, past Wolf Ranch, where they're building up off of research that's under 3,000 square feet. Yeah. That's not supposed to be the resolution that we're going for, right? But yet this is kind of the focus of where the developers are. Now there are pockets where they're trying to get some multifamily housing in, and when a bunch more of those projects hit, that's going to ease some of that, because in all reality, it is a supply and a demand issue. And we can't, again, right now, the developers are looking to try to take some of the front-loaded cost of the taxes and the fees off of those houses being built to supposedly reduce the overall cost of housing. So the question really has to be, well, why were they there in the first place if we can take them away?
Right.
Two, everybody that's up to this point has paid for them, so thanks for that. Three, where's all that money going if we're in fact collecting all those dollars off of that? So why isn't that help offsetting the affordable housing issues? And the fact that I remember when I told you earlier about $13 million for Shields, and it's going to take us $650 million of retail sales or whatever to make that up.
Yeah,
we gave Banning Lewis Ranch $430 million in fee reductions and incentives for those people out there. And yet, is the housing in Banning Lewis Ranch any less competitive in pricing than it is anywhere else in town? Yeah. So, you know what I mean? They're looking at, again, trying to help the developers make things happen faster. But again, we're taking away from the fundamental responsibilities of having the funding that's really actually necessary for us to put into place. And I'm still trying to find out what we're doing with the $5 million that we get from FEMA. Because for me, that sounds like a really great down payment at the cost of money that we could have to borrow some funding right now to provide for some development of some affordable housing from a city's project perspective. We've done it in a few small places, but we need to do it on a bigger scale. So like I said, $5 million, that's a big down payment on some financing. And with the cost of money right now still being fairly reasonable, because we're still in that 3% range, right? Why aren't we utilizing that to try to build out some of those projects that can be responsibly maintained once they're up and running by the people who can then afford to be in there and take pride of ownership and keep that community in the place that it needs to be. And let's then start, unfortunately making that probably less affordable as the cost of those houses go up. But you get my point.
No, we understand. I think that the gist of it is just there's got to be some creative thinking, the same way that you demonstrated the creative thinking around the housing. I think that it could do the same thing could happen with the police and their budget and the way that it's used and not used, and making sure that it fits the community that it's here for, instead of just
paying Norwood too. Yeah, paying Norwood developers.
Oh, Norwood, yeah. So anyway, we're good. John?
Yeah. I think that's good.
We had you for about, it looks like almost an hour here now. Yeah, so we appreciate it. There was one more comment that I wanted to leave you with. Mitchell Galloway. We were talking about the cops again, and he says the CSPD. Why does CSPD need more resources in the name of diversifying and orienting towards public safety? And why can't the massive bloated budget they already receive to be diversified? And then it says, why spend so much money on tear gas, riot gear, military grade equipments, and this all stuff can't be overseen. So, there's some of the things that people are talking about around that subject, and for you to keep in mind, as you're talking to the police chief, and hey, man, we need to give the firefighters more of the damn money, man. You know what I mean? They don't need to be out carrying boots around and filling up boots with dollar bills and stuff. That's antiquated crap, and I'm tired of it. And the firefighters calling the phone asking for money. It just doesn't make any sense when we got all this money in the city that we could be taking care of them.
Well, guys, we have some concerns, and it's really comes down to a priority and system. And a little quick story. So within the last year, our just retired fire chief was in a traffic accident, and he was being visited by a former deputy chief, fire chief that was from Colorado Springs, Tommy Smith. And so they were traveling together and got in a rollover accident. Tommy was able, because he used to work here, and knows the department, right? So he tried to call 911, got busy signal like 3 or 4 times, and then was put on hold. That still happens, right? So we're not even fundamentally taken care of. We talk about having the appropriate response. We don't have a freaking phone center that's not so challenged right now to keep up with the call volume. So you look at being a call taker or a dispatcher for the emergency system that's so overwhelmed that you get, as a caller, busy signals because their system is so overloaded because they don't have enough people to answer the phones to take care of the resources. Seriously, this has happened. So Tommy, this is a fact. This is no exaggeration. Tommy, being a chief, being a smart guy, he calls 17s direct, right? Because he can't get through to the dispatch center and said, hey, we got a traffic accident out here on Powers Boulevard. I need you guys to come out here. Send me the engine and the rescue, right? That's within the last year, gentlemen. Right. That's how far behind we are on resources. Yeah. So
that makes me think about sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, but I mean, so it's that underlying thing when people ask those questions. We're strapped in the fundamental responsibilities of government, man. And that's the reason. And do you think those call takers or dispatchers aren't a little frazzled? And
I was just going to talk about with Devon Bailey, after he was killed, the trial came out that someone made a false call to the 911 dispatcher, and whatever happened, they wasn't able to decipher that the call was that there was bullcrap happening. And so the cop was at the scene and trying to communicate with the dispatch, and the dispatch couldn't get the communication right, and Devon Bailey ends up dead, in a matter of minutes. So I think that there's a lot of translation there, with public safety and making sure that our cops can react correctly.
And also, people call 911 for everything now. They think they got to call 911 because their neighbor's pissing them off for some reason. Right. I don't know how to deal with that.
And they're done that.
Yeah. Hey, all right. Yeah. Thank you so much, Dave. Yep. We appreciate it. Thank you, and good luck on your race, man. And I'm gonna bring the beer and tacos and get that notepad to work, man.
Or you can bring.
Seriously, gentlemen. Yeah, I'll be actually frustrated when I'm successful that if you don't come see me, dude.
Well, you can come down here and bring us Modelo tacos too. There's a taco star.
Like I said, take a look at Olivia, man. I get it, man. I know she's kind of hardcore on some stuff, but she's really, truly a perspective on trying to make sure she has that outreach to the community, because I don't think she believes that Richard's doing right by the people that are in that district right now.
Well, if you can get her to come on here, that'd be great.
Yeah, we messaged her. Yeah, let her know we wanted to come on, man. We tell her we're okay. We're not that bad.
I'll do what I can.
All right. Hey, thanks a lot, Mr. Noblitt. Take it easy now. Yeah.
See ya.
Hey, you. We got your boy.